All right. Hello, Florida. If you needed some hurricane distraction, let me be that distraction for you for the next hour. But welcome to today's CLE, integrating AI into your practice management solution. So I'm going to give everybody about a minute to get in and get settled. Hopefully, let's see here. Maybe. I don't know. Austin, are we the only people on here? Here we go. Oh, there they are. I was like, where are all these attendees? I know they're here. Hello and welcome, everybody. If you just didn't see what I just said, welcome to today's CLE. We're going to give everybody about a minute to get in here, get settled. Today's CLE is integrating AI into your practice management solution. I know Florida's been a little bit crazy with everything that's been happening. I have family down there. I have family in Daytona Beach. So just really have been thinking about y'all, especially this past week with what's been happening with the hurricane. So wherever you are, and I would love to know where you're watching from. But really, truly hope that you're safe, hope that your family is safe, and hopefully minimal property damage. I know hurricanes are old hat for those of us who live in Florida or in Texas, so I get it, but still it doesn't make it any better when it impacts you and it impacts your family and your property. So really just been thinking about everybody there and hoping that everybody's doing well or on the road to recovery if you've had any type of impact from Hurricane Helene. But again, we're going to give everybody another, let's say, 20 seconds to get in here and get started. Feel free, you can chat with me in the webinar chat and look at us go. Or if you have questions as we go along, you can put those into the Q&A box. I'll point those out in a second before we get started. But you could have been anywhere in the world and you're here watching an AI CLE on practice management solution. So I know it sounds pretty dry. I know that topic maybe is not the most fun, but I love talking about this stuff. I promise I will make it as thrilling and exciting as possible, enough to maybe get your heart rate up a little bit, because we haven't had that much excitement, in the past week at all in Florida. So good times. So we'll get started in a second. Let me just make sure we are good to go. All right, perfect. Okay, well, again, welcome everyone to today's CLE for Florida Bar, and this is integrating AI into your practice management solution. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So I'm going to give you the course number and all that jazz towards the end of today's session. I know, super fun. The surprise is in not knowing when, but I will cue you into it. Don't worry about it. But as far as housekeeping goes, so I'm going to take questions live at the very end of today's CLE. So the last 5 minutes or so, we'll do questions. If you have questions, try to put those into the Q&A box. If you can't see that on your Zoom, if you can't see Q&A, click on that More button. It's the circle with 3 dots. Click on that, and then you'll see Q&A, and you can ask your questions there. Or there's not a bunch of people in here today, so you can just put it into the chat box, and I'll grab it from there too. So if you have questions as we go along, ask that in the chat box, and I'll get to those at the very end of today's session. All right, so let's get started. As always, with any type of Florida Bar CLE, you'll get a copy of the slides, you'll get a copy of the recording after today's session. All right, a little bit about me, your host for today's AI CLE. So my name is Jordan Turk. I am a practicing family law attorney down here in Austin. So all the drama all the time, which I'm sure if there are any family attorneys on here, you understand that, and I feel your plight, and I commiserate with you. But in addition to being a practicing family law attorney, I am the legal technology advisor at Smokeball. And for those who are unfamiliar with Smokeball, or if this is your first interaction with us, welcome. We're an all-in-one cloud-based practice management software for attorneys. Say that 5 times fast. So what does that mean? It means that we help you manage all of your day-to-day legal and administrative tasks, like think case management and billing and trust accounting, timekeeping, and everything under the sun that you could possibly need to run your case. We help you do it, and we do it all in one place. So we enable you to track all of your time also, which was my biggest issue at my prior firm. I was a problem child when it came to time tracking and inputting my hours. So what Smokeball has is something called auto time, which kind of exists in the background of your computer. So it tracks on what matter you are working on, what you're doing and for how long, and then it spits out a draft timesheet for you at the end of every day. So I spent 3 hours drafting a decree in the Smith matter. It knows that, it spits out that timesheet, and I can add it to a draft invoice. So it's pretty seamless and lovely and changed my life. I'm a big fan of it. We also have a metric ton of pre-built workflows and court forms that are specific to your state and specific to your practice area, because as we all know, every judge is a special snowflake when it comes to the forms that they want for their specific court, which has been really fun to figure out and navigate as an attorney, especially when I was a baby attorney many, many moons ago. But all that to say is we have those forms already in our system, continuously updated, and they're already automated and ready to go for you. And most exciting of all, and related to today, Smokeball now has its own AI features. So if you want to learn more about Smokeball and what it can do for your firm, we'll have a poll at the very end of today's session where you can request that we reach out to you with more information. But it's a fabulous, fabulous product. That's why I'm here. And also, best of all, we are an approved member benefit provider for the Florida Bar. So this means that you get a 10% discount on our subscriptions. That is a huge deal. If you have any questions about that or want to learn more about it, Austin's going to post this link right here into the chat, or you can scan this fancy schmancy QR code, and that'll take you to the landing page too. That will tell you more about the partnership between Smokeball and the Florida Bar. All right, so getting into today, I'm going to give you a very brief kind of introduction into generative AI. So for those of you who are on here but don't really understand what generative AI is, I'm going to give you the briefest of brief synopsis on that and what it does, the mechanics of it, so very quickly, and then we'll get into the meat of the matter, right? We're talking about AI and practice management solutions. If you are not familiar with what a practice management solution is, I just told you a little bit about Smokeball, which is a practice management solution, but I'll tell you more about the heavy hitters in the field. So there's Smokeball, there's Clio, there's my case, there's Carrot, and Practice Panther. Can't talk, Panther. And so I'll be going into those, kind of telling you what their offerings are with regard to generative AI and what they're doing. But also, I'll just give you a very brief overview on what practice management systems even are. So if you are unfamiliar with any of this technology, be it generative AI or practice management software, I'm going to go through it all. Do not worry about it. So if you've had any questions about either of these, sit back, buckle up. It's going to be a good time. And then we'll go into security and confidentiality concerns, especially with regard to generative AI when you're using it. I'll talk about maybe some lawyers behaving badly with regard to what's been happening with generative AI and how to avoid that, especially how to avoid that with your technology software that you're using. We'll go into your favorite integrations. So outside of practice management software, right, we have a lot of standalone pieces that some of us might use for our firms. And you might be wondering, oh, I wonder if they have some sort of AI offering. So I'll go into those too. We'll talk about kind of what the future looks like for legal and generative AI, and then we'll get into those questions, right? And that'll be at the end of the CLE. But there is a very exciting after party where I'm going to give you a live demonstration of Smokeball AI. So if you kind of want to see in real time and be able to ask questions in real time as far as what practice management software looks like with this AI component, stick around for 10 extra minutes at the end of today's CLE, and I'm going to take you through it and do kind of a live demonstration of how it works, how it can help you, draft emails and go through your case file, things like that, summarize documents. So I'll take you through all of that. If you want to stick around for 10 minutes at the after party, it is completely optional. By no means do you have to stick around for that in order to get your credit. You get your credit at the end of Q&A, and then you are free to go. But if you wanted to add a little bit of spice to your day and kind of see how this works in real time, stick around for that after party. All right, so going into a very brief introduction of generative AI. So really starting this from a legal context, I wanted to talk really quick about these two law professors, Michael Bomarito and Daniel Katz. So at one point they had a thought to have ChatGPT take the bar exam, which sounds really great. This was an old iteration of GPT, so it took the bar exam and it failed. And so a lot of us were like, whew, okay, you know, we're safe for now. Its attorneys are safe. But the problem was it failed, but it didn't fail by a lot. So we kind of knew what was coming. We knew kind of how rapidly this was happening. You know, I think this was in 2020, I want to say they did this. And so they weren't going to stop here. But it did fail the first time. But if anything, it gave really good fodder for The Onion. So if you can't read this, the headline for this Onion article is ChatGPT forced to take the bar exam, even though its dream was to be an AI art bot. We've all been there. So it provided really good fodder for a bunch of outlets and satire magazines, things like that. However, Michael Bomarito, Daniel Katz, unfazed. So a new version of GPT came out, like a better, stronger version, which it's continually coming out and continually updating. I'll explain why that is. So it retook the bar exam. and it passed this time. I will say this, a lot of headlines you're going to see about GPT taking the bar exam, it'll say, oh, it was in the top 10% of test takers, or it scored in the 90th percentile, which actually is a bit misleading. So what they did was when it took the bar exam and it passed, woohoo, it then started comparing that data to repeat test takers. And for those who are familiar with the bar exam and familiar with the statistics, that happen every year from it, repeat test takers have a much, much lower pass rate than first-time test takers. I mean, it's dramatic. I want to say Texas, at one point, pass rate for first-time test takers was, something in the neighborhood of, 70% at one point, but then repeat test takers, it was 30%. It was a very dramatic drop-off, right? So the people that published this, right, and said GPT passed the bar exam, yes, it did, but it wasn't actually in the top 10% of test takers. It was in the top 10% of repeat test takers. And we all know that that data, is a little bit not favorable when it comes to the repeat test takers, but super favorable to ChatGPT. So just keep that in mind. It did pass it, but not necessarily in the wonderful way that they're kind of painting. But now, not only has it passed the bar exam, which is including essays, including multiple choice and all that, it now has passed the MPRE. Yes, the days of yore, just go back there when you were in your professional responsibility class and you were having to take this exam too in order to become a lawyer. ChatGPT has now taken that and passed it, so it could technically become a lawyer in its own right. But I'll kind of explain how it can't do that quite yet. So going into just the actual mechanics of generative AI and how this works. So a useful way of thinking about this is thinking about it in the context of extractive AI versus generative AI. So extractive AI, you're finding relevant results within existing data, which sounds very boring, but it goes down to something that we've all been using forever and ever, or many years or for decades in our practice. Think about Westlaw, think about Lexis, think about Fastcase, right? So these types of databases are utilizing extractive AI, where they're finding relevant results within existing data. So if I'm asking for a statute, or if I'm asking for a case that contains XYZ, it's giving me exactly what I asked for, nothing more, nothing less. It's not creating any new content. It's just saying, here are the relevant results to your query, right? So we've all been very familiar with extractive AI. It's just working from, an existing data set and giving us answers from those. Now, generative AI is something completely different. It's a completely different class because we're doing the opposite almost of what extractive AI is doing. So generative AI is creating all new content from existing data. And how it actually works, and I always get very frustrated with things like this, where it's like, okay, you've explained what it is, but I still have no idea how it works. So for generative AI, how it works is at its core, it is a text prediction software. So it's just predicting the next word in a series of words. So for instance, if I asked you, dear audience, Mary went to the grocery store to buy a dozen blank, our brains immediately know, or at least can conjecture, that the next word in that is going to be eggs, right? She went to the grocery store to buy a dozen eggs. So generative AI can tell you the exact same thing because it's studied these huge swaths of text. So they call them LLMs. It no longer stands for an advanced legal degree, by the way. It now stands for a large language model. So get legal degree out of your head and replace it with a large language model. And that's essentially what generative AI is basing its results off of, right? So think about anything that's freely available on the internet. Think about this type of technology just scraping all of that information, so then it knows when you tell it the line, hey, Mary went to the grocery store to buy a dozen blank, we know eggs, and now this technology, generative AI, also knows that it's eggs. So it's really just a program that is combing the depths of the internet, or it's consuming entire books, and then it uses that to generate its own unique outputs. Now it can draft letters, it can do poetry for you, it can help you, excuse me, it can help you plan your honeymoon, which is what I used it for. But by the way, it did not take into account days that museums are closed in Spain. So keep that in mind, that it is still a fallible product at the end of the day that still has some kinks to work out. But really at its core, that's all it is. So think about it that way. It is just a text prediction software, and that is at its core what it is. Also, you might think, oh, Jordan, you said like it also scrapes books. Is that an issue? Are there any lawsuits pending when it comes to generative AI? Because maybe these authors don't want their data scraped. And the answer to that is yes, resoundingly. So a bunch of authors have gotten together. They're doing a class action lawsuit against some of these companies where their work is available online, but it's protected work, right? It's copyrighted. And they're saying, hey, we never agreed for you to use our data or our work to train your models on, right? These LLMs. And so now all these authors are getting up in arms about that. Rightly so, because these things are consuming their work and putting output, putting out output based upon that. So it's become kind of a huge issue right now. There's also an existing lawsuit with the New York Times with one of these companies too, because they're saying, hey, you used your large language models and your generative AI was trained on our protected work. You did not ask for our permission, so they're suing for that too. But in the meantime, we get to have a lot of really good fun with generative AI. All right, so just talking about how attorneys initially used this generative AI software. So a lot of it comes down to things like ChatGPT. So I would suggest if this is your first kind of foray into generative AI and you're kind of wondering what it is, you maybe want to play around with it, but you want to be safe about it, make a ChatGPT account. It's the most user-friendly way to kind of dip your toe into it and then start playing around with it. It's completely free. We'll talk about not putting sensitive or protected client information into that. We will talk about it, but it's kind of like a gateway drug when it comes to generative AI to create a ChatGPT account, because then you can start asking it questions. Actually, let me show y'all what I mean by that. Let me stop share here and let me get into, I'll actually show y'all what this looks like in real time. Look at us go. Oh my God, we're doing it live, unplanned. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. And then let's share this one, application window. Oh yes, let's do screen. Here we go, just to give you all an idea of what this looks like and what you should be doing. Hopefully that's, yes, ChatGPT. Okay, so if you look at this, this is just your ChatGPT account. You can type in open.ai or openai.chatgpt, or you can Google and do OpenAI GPT, or you can just type in chatgpt.com. Make your profile. It takes about 10 seconds, and then you can see you can start doing anything that you want here. It'll ask you, do you want to create a Renaissance style painting? So they do a lot of things with graphics now. You can create a story, out of thin air. You can make a recommendation based on the data that you give it. You can, like I did for my trip, ask it things about a specific place that you're visiting. So this is a cool way to kind of get started with this type of generative AI software, but it's kind of more of a safe way. Sometimes you can be fun with it, like, why is Jordan Turk so cool? Hopefully it knows who I am. I'm considered cool in the legal community for several reasons. Look at me go. I'm known for being highly knowledgeable about family law and legal technology. Oh my gosh. So you can do it, but so, this is obviously very silly, but you can do some really interesting things in ChatGPT. If you've been wanting to write some sort of a book or anything like that, or you're trying to get started, this is a really cool thing to really just start understanding how the technology works and the types of questions that you can ask it, and you can kind of start refining the types of questions that you ask and delve really far into what they call prompt writing. But that's a CLE for another day. So let me get back into our slides here. Sorry for that. Here we go. Are we back in it? Yes, except now we're going to slideshow it. But then don't look at my notes because I'm going to have to share this with y'all. All right, here we go. Oh, yes. Perfect, perfect. So actually, we're going to do that. We're going to slideshow this. And hopefully, there we go. I did it. All right, so back into the slides. Thank you for coming with me on that ChatGPT journey. But again, that's what I recommend to just get started with a lot of this. So part of what attorneys have been using it for, at least in the past couple of years, and now they've gotten more sophisticated about it, was getting summaries. So whether it was summaries of legal documents or summaries of things like how I put in here, I just wanted a summary of this. I just wanted a summary of this article from the Washington Post. And the cool thing about it is the summaries that it gives you are actually very, very good. And let's say you gave me this entire summary, and then I said, you know what, I don't want that. I just wanted like a paragraph of a summary. Well, then I can ask it again, hey, can you make this into a paragraph? Hey, can you make this into a 2-sentence summary? And it will do it, and it will actually do a very, very good job. And then things like ideation, one of my favorite things to use this for when it comes to this GPT software or when it comes to generative AI is ideation. So, you know, when you're in your office at 10 p.m. and you're prepping for a hearing or you're prepping for trial and you've gone through your 5 million exhibits and you've been labeling them yourself because everything's just chaos at your office, you know, when you just want to leave and you want to be able to sleep for a few hours before you have to leave for the courthouse. Oh, but then you remember, I don't have an opening argument done and it makes you want to die a little bit. Well, you can use generative AI to help you with this. So I asked, hey, can you give me a good argument for a contested divorce case? And what it gives you is actually not that bad. It's very flowery. So here it says, ladies and gentlemen of the court, esteemed members of the jury in your honor. Today we gather here to address the painful reality of a broken bond, to navigate the stormy waters of the contested divorce. So obviously that's overly flowery language, but this is just a start, right? So I can go in and I can iterate with that and refine it. So I can say, hey, this is a bench trial, even though Texas does still have jury trials for family law, which is very interesting, let me tell you, and very expensive. But any hoozles. So you can say, hey, this isn't a jury trial, it's a bench trial. So then the generative AI software will remove any reference to a jury. And then you can say, hey, can you make it less flowery? Can you make it more compelling? So you can do all of this stuff within generative AI, which then can translate to your legal technology software. And we'll talk about that in a second too. And then blog posts have become very popular. So especially if you're trying to get your website up or you're trying to get more traffic and generate, you know, hopefully more leads from your website, a lot of attorneys have started utilizing this type of software for blog posts. So I say, hey, can you give me a 600-word blog post on custody evaluators? And it does, and it's actually very good. So you can take this, you can tweak it, you can make it your own, but at least you're not having to work from a blank page. Right? A lot of this is just getting you started so that you don't have to, you know, pull something out of thin air yourself. And then drafting, which is a heavy, heavy thing in practice management software, integrating with AI. We'll go really in depth about this too. But drafting is such a great thing to utilize this type of technology for. So I said, can you draft an email about the discovery process to a client? And it actually, again, does a very, very good job of it. And then just here's some real life examples of how attorneys are utilizing AI. This is a colleague of mine in Oregon. He's a defense attorney in Oregon. So he's played around with quite a few pieces of software. And so, for instance, in this one, he uploaded this document and he asked the document, what are the claims for relief pled for in here? And so it lists out on the right, here are all the claims for relief that have been pled for in this document. Or in here, you know, so he asked, he said, hey, here's this document. He uploaded a document. This is to ChatGPT. He redacted out all of the sensitive information, which we will talk about. So he redacts all that out. And then he said, okay, pretend you're a witness in the attached deposition. What do you know about the claim made by the high school student? And so it'll answer, it says in this deposition, I, as a witness, am aware of the following regarding the high school student's claim of sexual abuse. And it goes into it. So you can think about it this way. It's really nice as far as ideation is concerned. So when you're trying to go back and forth, when you're trying to poke holes in something, when you're trying to get another perspective, and maybe maybe you're alone at the office, you can't bounce any ideas off of anybody, you can bounce it off of this type of software, which is really fun. Here's another one that he did. He uploaded a motion for summary judgment in MSJ, and he said, you're representing defendant at trial in the case described in the attached MSJ. Write an opening statement that would take approximately 15 minutes to deliver. Focus on the motivations behind the decisions made by the defendant, which are protecting kids and other staff members from COVID and complying with the state's vaccine mandate for schools. And so you'll see here, it actually does a really good job. He did this one off of Claude, which is a competitor to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is owned by AI or owned by OpenAI. Claude, I believe, is owned by Amazon, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, so there's a lot of different players in the field here. All right, so getting into practice management solutions and what AI is looking for with regard to these specific ones. So just a little bit of an overview on what a practice management system is. So they call it PMS, if you want to get hip with the lingo here in legal technology. But essentially what it is a way to manage every aspect of your practice, right? So from intake to case management, to client communication, to billing and invoicing, to trust account reconciliation, right? And everything in between, that's what practice management systems are most utilized for, right? You can run your entire case from these different companies, and hopefully it doesn't require 5 million different logins to do it, right? Everything's kind of housed in one place. So that's the biggest benefit of practice management solutions. So if there's one thing that law firms really need, especially if you're hanging your own shingle, you're going out on your own, practice management systems are the number one thing to use, especially if you're just trying to keep yourself organized and saving your sanity with that. So the key players in the game, you're all probably familiar with these, or you've heard of them at least. Obviously, Smokeball High, but Clio and MyCase and Carrot, which used to be Zola. There's Practice Panther. There's Filevine, and there's a few more, but I would say those are probably the ones that you'll hear about the most. I think those are the heavy hitters kind of in the field. So we'll talk about the heavy hitters and what their AI solution offerings will be or are. So we say this all the time, especially here at Smokeball, where we believe that AI won't replace you, but those leveraging AI for efficiency are likely to eclipse those who don't. So I view it like legal automation. So for those who don't know what automation is, it's essentially where you can just use a template of a document and you can automate it in your practice management system or whatever you have, to where essentially if you open up a document in the Smith matter, everything is already filled out for you. Right. So your case style is there. Petitioner and respondent have been replaced with your client and the opposing party. Opposing counsel's information is already on this document. So everything's already done when you open up the document. So all you have to do is review it, add in any type of substantive legal argument, and then be done with it. Right. So everybody thought when automation really came on the scene, oh my God, this is going to, do away with my staff, or I'm not going to have a job anymore. A lot of paralegals were freaking out. But in reality, no one lost their job when it comes to automation. It just made everybody way more efficient. It made the office less prone to human error, since you're not having to do find and replace and manually typing in things yourself. It's already in the system and the system is doing it for you. So I think that AI is just the same, where you're not going to go out of business, right? If you don't adopt AI, you're not going to go out of business if you don't adopt document automation, right? It's just the fact that your colleagues who have already done this are doing better than you are. And they are gaining more revenue than you, or they are just getting more free time back in their day. I say this as somebody who did not have a practice management system or any type of automation in place until, a few years ago. And it completely, changed the way that I worked at my firm, completely changed the game for me, made life a whole lot easier for me. So it's kind of like that. It's absolutely not going to put you out of business anytime soon, but this is going to make your life a whole lot easier. And using AI means you can be a more efficient lawyer, right? So what's the benefit of all of this? I always ask. It's going to not only improve the quality of service you can deliver since it's made you more efficient, but it's also going to give you the ability to help even more clients, which is always my goal at the end of the day. Especially those of us that have to turn around people who come to our door because they won't work and you're already overloaded and your docket's too much for you to handle already. So now it's going to give you that ability, hopefully, to help even more clients. So here's kind of an overview of what's happening with some of the heavy hitters in the field for their AI offerings. So first off, MyCase IQ. So currently released to the customers, they have a text editing tool. So especially if you are drafting emails and things like that, this can draft it for you. It can change the tone of the email. So maybe you want to be more professional, or maybe you know the client and they're a friend, so you want to make the tone of your emails more casual. So especially AI is really great. Generative AI is wonderful if you have a problem with tone correction, which I did, especially in my baby attorney days when I was maybe acerbic or a little bit too mean in my emails, or a little bit too professional maybe in the emails that I would send to opposing counsel and things like that. So this could have helped me greatly when it comes to that, where I could have softened it, and I could have asked the tool, hey, can you soften my tone here? Hey, can you have a more friendlier tone here? And it will change it for you. But in my case, especially, one of the coolest things they have, and they'll tell you this is kind of their baby, is they have a translation tool. So I forgot how many languages now they can translate into, but especially if you are in PI land, especially if you are in immigration land. Spanish obviously is big on there, but you can go and look at all of the languages, but essentially they offer this AI translation tool. So anything that you would want to write, any type of document, any type of email, there's a built-in translation tool for you where you can automatically push that into a different language if you wanted. And I've been told that it's actually really, really accurate and really fun to use. So if that's relevant to your practice, definitely check that out. Also, what I'm going to say about this is that for practice management software, when they're talking about generative AI open offerings, this is going to be baked into their already existing software. So you can't call my case and then say, hey, I don't want my case. I just want AI. I just want your AI offering. You can't do that. Same with Smokeball, same with Clio, right? It's like you can't call them and say that you want just their AI product standalone. This is only for if you go, you sign up with my case, you sign up with Smokeball, you sign up with Clio, and then you can get access to their AI software. So you can't just buy these standalone AI software, right? So you have to actually get the practice management system itself and then add it on. But continuing on, so in beta for my case IQ right now, and this is all just from their website, they're going to have legal document summaries, but coming up, what they're saying they will have is intelligent draft, where their IQ will suggest a first draft of a client portal message, maybe. It'll give you or maybe it'll say, hey, you should send this to the client, or it'll give you an event description, things like that. Even more intelligent translations, just building onto its existing software, intelligent task and event generation, which I think is super cool. So essentially the IQ is going to analyze content and suggest a new task or events to generate. So how I imagine this is going to work, I do not know, but how I think it's going to work is, for instance, if maybe you get a notice of hearing that's scanned into the system, and then bada bing, bada boom, it'll say, hey, do you want to set this as an event on your calendar? So that's how I think that's going to play out. The powerful thing about having AI integrated into your practice management software is, think about it this way. Every single document that you could possibly need or want in your case, or that's been filed in your case, every email that you've sent in your case, right? All of it's saved into your practice management software. And so the AI is taking that and it's looking at everything that's been, brought into your system, and it's able to use that to your advantage. So for instance, in Smokeball, everything that gets put into Smokeball is automatically scanned and then OCR'd, so it makes it readable, right? So everything is readable and everything is searchable and everything is consumable by the AI. So you can start doing really fun things with it. But that's the power of AI integrated into your practice management software, is that now it knows all of this information about your case that no other piece of software would know, right? Because all of this data exists solely in your practice management software. And then Clio Duo. So Clio is interesting. So last year, in 2023, they unveiled what they called Clio Duo, which is their AI offering. And it was a really big splash. Everybody was very excited, but then kind of nothing happened with it for a long time. And so the release status was unknown. But it said, hey, here's what it's going to include. I'll say this, like Clio always does it big. And so I think they probably unveiled it last year, realized there was a lot of kinks to work out, didn't want to put out something that wasn't ready, right? So what they're doing, but I think this is just fully conjecture, is I think that they're going to reveal the new and improved Duo. And I guess it's in a week, yes. So at ClioCon. So Clio has its own legal conference every year. It's called ClioCon. It's crazy and wonderful. So if you are a Clio user, definitely go. I think it's a lot of fun. But so for ClioCon, they always do a big unveiling of something, right? Like there's something that's the hot topic or the topic du jour every year at ClioCon, which is next week, actually in Austin. Hi, come see me. I'll be here. But so what they'll probably do, and they've probably just been holding off on talking anymore about Duo until they make a big splash at this year's ClioCon. So it was released technically last year, but nothing's been happening with it, and it's been completely silent. You can't really find anything on their website about it other than, oh, here's what we think the functions will include. But check back in a week, because Clio will have, I think, in my opinion, will have unveiled like the new and improved Duo. But from their website what they say is going to happen here and what they say Duo will be able to do. Personalized recommendations to help prioritize efforts for maximum task completion and work efficiency. I think that's kind of like what we just talked about with my case. It'll probably scan, see what's going on, and make suggestions for you as far as what needs to happen. Reminder prompts for pending bill approvals and overdue tasks, which billing is my baby, and I like that. Bill generation based on activities related to a specific client. Document summarization and generation of simple documents. Again, this is where generative AI thrives, is in document summarization and generation of documents. Matter overviews for improved client communications, conversations with Duo to gain insights on the firm's business performance or to better understand Clio's product capabilities. So all of this is kind of nebulous, I know, because they don't have the product out yet. But again, check back in a week. So if you are a Clio user, they always release this type of announcement at ClioCon. So just give it a week or two, and then you'll probably get the email saying, hey, we just announced this. And then you could probably take a demo of their AI software. So if you're a Clio user, kind of hold on. I do think it's coming. So just give it a week or two. And then obviously I'm biased, but this is also Smokeballs AI. We're starting out with Archie. So Archie, we figured, and again, if you want to stay for the after party, I'm going to give you a live demonstration of Archie, just a quick 10 minutes and then send you on your way. But for Archie, we call it our AI Matter Assistant. So it helps you streamline your matter management, gives you tasks like answering matter queries, it summarizes matter information, it drafts correspondence in real time. But what does that actually look like? And what does that mean? So how I view Archie is I view it as your bumbling summer associate, right? Where it's like you have something here that absolutely can help you because it knows your entire client file. So think about it this way. If I'm drafting a final decree of divorce, and typically the decree asks for the date of marriage. The date of marriage for me, I have no idea what it is. We take it at intake, and then it's not really relevant until the final decree of divorce when they're asking for this, minutia when it comes to this data for this date of marriage. And so instead of me having to go through the client file and find this, right, or find where I've put it into my system, instead I can just ask Archie and say, hey, Archie, what's the date of marriage? And Archie, since it already knows and it's consumed all of the relevant documents in this matter, it can then tell me, oh, the date of marriage is X. And so I can go and plug that into the system. And it'll tell me where it pulled that data from too. So it'll link to the document that it gets that data from so that I can double check it too. So Archie right now, for me, has been a boon and a godsend because I'm a true solo right now. So I don't really have staff that I can outsource this to say, hey, please draft this email, or please draft this document, or please find this little piece of information, or hey, please make a table, or please make a timeline of this case. Instead, I can just ask Archie. So it's already saved me a bunch of time, particularly when it comes to drafting emails to opposing counsel, particularly when it comes to providing summaries of things like marital settlement agreements and things like that to go over with the client. It's been lovely. But again, that's because generative AI loves to draft things and loves to give you summaries of things and likes to be able to change your tone and things like that. So again, if you want to see how this actually works and looks in real time, I'll be giving a live demonstration of it at the very end of today's CLE. But it's been a wonderful thing for me to play around with. All right, going into security and confidentiality concerns. Ooh, I know, scary for October. But here we go. So the headline of this article is, whoops, Samsung workers accidentally leaked trade secrets via ChatGPT. So the problem is with the products like ChatGPT, they are an open source system. So that means anything that you put into this type of software can be shared with a third party. And it is. ChatGPT is actually taking that and taking the query, taking the answer that it gave you, and then it's pushing that back into its system and it's using that to learn from, right? So you can imagine if you're putting sensitive client information in there or confidential client information into that system, guess what? It's no longer confidential. So be careful what you are uploading to these systems. So if you're shopping around for vendors for generative AI, be they legal tech or otherwise, your first question should be, do you share any data with a third party? And the answer to that should be no, right? It should be a closed system for you if you're going to put confidential client information into it. You can use ChatGPT at any time, just make sure that there's no protected or sensitive data in there. So if you're going to put a document in it, make sure to redact everything pertinent, right? As far as names and information goes. So the next question you should ask is, what guardrails do you have in place to protect any client and any confidential client information from being shared? So there should be some form of a guardrail in place to where they can assure you that this data is not being shared with a third party, that this data is not being used to train their future large language models on. So two of the biggest questions to ask when you're kind of shopping around for generative AI. Oh, and going back to Samsung, so what ended up happening, the story behind that is engineers were one of the first professions to understand the power of generative AI, especially when it comes to generating code or double checking their own code. And so what was happening was Samsung employees, some engineers, were putting in protected code that they had into ChatGPT to figure out any bugs or to figure out what should be added or what should be taken away, things like that. And so obviously Samsung found out and realized that their proprietary data was no longer proprietary, and they were very angry. So now actually Samsung has its own in-house generative AI closed system. Another thing to watch out for, including when you're utilizing generative AI in a legal tech capacity, is there's something called hallucinations that abound with regard to legal technology. And that really just means that this technology can and will lie to you. And sometimes it'll lie with reckless abandon. It won't mean to lie to you, and the lie will look very convincing. But regardless, it is a lie. So that's been the problem with some of these attorneys, and we'll talk about it. But right now, how generative AI exists is you have to trust, you can trust it, but you have to verify its output, which every bar association now in the ABA is going to tell you that you are ultimately responsible for its output. So if you go into ChatGPT and you ask it for some case law on, custody in Texas, probably 80% of the case law that it's going to give you is completely fictitious and made up. However, it will look very convincing. It will give you what looks like a proper citation. If you ask for the case opinion on it, it'll give you a 10-page court opinion, but it's not real. So just be very careful when you're utilizing things like ChatGPT or Claude or Bard, and you're asking it questions, because chances are, especially legal specific questions, chances are it's lying about some of that stuff. So you always have to trust but verify when it comes to these generative AI products. And that includes even the legal specific products, right? So Lexis and Westlaw both have generative AI offerings, and they are super cool. So if you have a chance to check out CoCounsel, so that's Westlaw, they bought Case Text, and that's how they got CoCounsel for $650 million. Yes, I really missed the boat on that one. But so they bought it, and it's a phenomenal product. Will help you write briefs and things like that, and it'll actually give you cases that it cites from Westlaw system, and it'll populate those cases for you. It'll let you double check it. However, even those types of products are not immune from hallucinations. I think a Stanford study said that hallucinations abounded in Lexis's AI product like 17% of the time, and Westlaw it was like 34% of the time. But that doesn't mean necessarily that they were completely lying to you. Sometimes it's just inaccuracy. Sometimes they just used the case in the wrong way. But again, it's on the attorneys to double check that output. So again, just be very careful and make sure no matter what, that any type of AI software that you get gives you an easy way to double check its output. So if there is a practice management system where it's saying, oh yeah, the date of marriage is X, it should give you the ability to double check that fast. Like it should say date of marriage is X taken from this document, so that you can review that document really quick, check it for accuracy, and then be good to go. So just think about that as you're kind of exploring generative AI softwares. Also, if a company or software, sorry, that's not plural. If a company offering generative AI features guarantees you 100% truth or accuracy in its output, you need to run away, and run away very quickly. Because again, as the technology exists right now, it is impossible to make that guarantee, even with guardrails in place, even with all the security measures that you could want. It's impossible to guarantee that. So I've seen that pop up quite a bit now for all these little pieces of software running around saying, oh, it's, 100% authentic, 100% truthful. Again, that's absolutely impossible, just how the data is trained right now. So just talking about it more, understanding the dangers of an open system and keeping yourself out of the disciplinary process, which we'll talk about in a slide. Some attorneys behaving badly when it comes to this process. So remember, like for software like ChatGPT, everything that you put into it becomes freely available. So especially for these free tier softwares, be very careful. Sometimes you can buy higher levels or higher tiers of these regular softwares like GPT or Claude or Bard and things like that. And then they'll say, oh, if it's this tier, then your data is not shared, or if it's this tier, then it's HIPAA compliant, things like that. Don't know how much I trust that yet when they tell me that it's HIPAA compliant. So, TBD on that one. But so the higher tiers that you pay for typically are going to give you a little bit more of a security measure. But when you are vetting vendors or providers, especially with legal tech, again, ask if they share information with a third party. The goal is that they don't, right? You want a closed system when it comes to your data and when it comes to your confidential client information. Legal tech companies care more about your license to practice than a random third party company. So I will say, and implore you to use legal technology companies when it comes to generative AI. How I like to view it is, Smokeball, we have a vested interest in your license to practice law because we want you to continue being a user of Smokeball until the day that you decide to retire, right? So we have a more vested interest in that. Ergo, we are going to focus more on security, focus more on adhering to client confidentiality and your ethical concerns and considerations than, say, a chat GPT or say a Claude, things like that. So there's just a more vested interest when it comes to legal technology companies, which is why I would rather use that when it comes to generative AI. And also when you're vetting these vendors, ask what type of guardrails they have in place, one for security purposes, but then two, what guardrails do you have in place for me to be able to verify the accuracy of the output from this generative AI software? So I promised that I'd do a little lawyers behaving badly situation. So one, this happened in Colorado, I believe. Yes. So this was the actual, I think it was the first in the country, the first suspension for an attorney who abused generative AI software. So essentially, like the attorneys in New York that were fined, I think $5,000, they were sanctioned. This attorney went on to ChatGPT, asked for all this case law. Of course, ChatGPT gives him all the case law that perfectly aligns and agrees with his case. So strange, but he doesn't question it. He puts it into an MSA and does all of this, or puts it in, not an MSA, he puts it into a legal document, submits it to the court. The court starts questioning that, and opposing counsel starts questioning that because they're like, none of that makes sense. And these cases aren't anything that we've heard of, right? And so then he goes back, and you'll see this box in orange was a conversation, a text conversation between the attorney and his paralegal. So, attorney, I think all of my case sites from ChatGPT are garbage. I can't even find the cases in Lexis. Paralegal, did you not check them after it gave them to you? Ever the words of wisdom. Attorney, no, like an idiot. Paralegal, are you going to withdraw it? Attorney, I have no idea what to do. I'm trying to find actual case law in our favor now to present to the judge. I don't have time for this, dot, dot, dot. That attorney was suspended for 6 months. So again, it just goes back to that whole thing of this is extremely powerful software, and these are extremely powerful pieces of technology, this, generative AI. But no matter what, you still have to double check its output. I always say to treat generative AI kind of like a bumbling summer associate, right? Where they are very smart and they want to prove themselves, right? Because they want a job at the end of the day. But so they want to make you happy. They'll do anything for you. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to have a summer associate draft me something, I'm going to take that, not look at it, and just send it to the judge. It would never happen, right? I'm always going to double check the output from that associate because I'm not wanting to embarrass myself. Same thing happens with generative AI. Just double check it. Check your citations. Make sure what you're reading makes sense. Oh yeah, and getting into AI and your favorite integrations, and I'll go, oh, I'm pressed for time, so I'll go through these. So this is what I was talking about before. Sometimes you have your favorite integrations like Smith AI or other ones that we're going to talk about that you utilize in your firm, and maybe you're wondering, oh, do they have any AI offerings? Chances are they either have one or they're actively working on one right now. So if there is a piece of software that you just love to use in your office, and you think, oh, I wonder what they're doing right now, Google them and see what they're doing for their AI, because chances are they have it or it's in beta and you can be added to the beta. And a lot of times they do that for free. So that means you get firsthand look at this. You get you get early access. Sorry, can't stop coughing. You get early access to the actual product, and typically they let you have it for free since you're part of the beta test community. So if there's a piece of software that you love, that you're like, oh, I wonder what they're doing AI wise, email them, email support, and see if you can be added to their beta, because chances are highly likely that they've already incorporated AI into their product. You just don't know it yet, right? They're still working on it on the back end. But for Smith AI, wow, I'm so sorry. I'm going to mute myself really quick while I cough. All right. So for Smith AI, Austin is allergy capital of the world. But for Smith AI, so they are offering an AI plus human staffed web chat. So it's powered by these large language models. It's going to be trained on your data, and it's going to help provide more helpful experiences to clients when they come in and they chat with your firm. And then also coming soon, they were going to do an AI voice assistant. So they'll have live agents as a backup, obviously, but they would still have this AI voice assistant, which would help a metric ton of attorneys anyway. So that's what's coming down the pipe for Smith AI. And then for Lawmatics, for those who are unfamiliar with Lawmatics, I would say it focuses on client intake. And so they have LMAI. And this is just an example that I pulled. Sorry for the blurry picture. It's just an example I pulled from their website. But essentially, how this would work is, let's say somebody missed their consultation, so they're a no-show. So Lawmatics LMAI knows that, they see that they missed it, and then it automatically drafts this email where it says, dear client, whoever their first name is, we hope this email finds you well. We wanted to follow up regarding your missed consultation with our firm. And then it goes into detail about rebooking and things like that. But it completely drafted this email on its own, unprompted, right? It just got notified that this person didn't show up for their consultation. So that's a really powerful thing that it's doing. And then there's a company called Yosierge. So if you are in PI land, this will be very relevant for you. So Yosierge is like a medical records retrieval service and storage service. And so what they've done is they started incorporating a generative AI-based chronological ordering, or AI-based software for chronological ordering, a medical expense table, medical summaries, right? AI summaries, they OCR things with AI. And so that's getting better and better too. So Yossi are just doing that. I highly recommend you check them out. They're a really cool company if you're looking for a PI medical records situation right there. And then LawDroid Copilot, really, really cool piece of software. I feel like they adopted AI pretty early. That'll help you research legal issues, helps you draft emails and letters, helps you summarize documents and things like that. A lot of ideation specific stuff that's happening there with LawDroid Copilot if you already use LawDroid. Talked about case text co-counsel already, but again, if you haven't, and if you do heavy drafting, like if you do a lot of appellate work, especially you do a lot of brief writing, co-counsel is lovely because it can help you draft it. And it actually is really, really good. I'm sure they're about to make it so much more expensive since Westlaw bought it, and that's what Thomson Reuters does, which kind of bums me out a little bit. But definitely I would take a test drive of co-counsel if you are heavy into drafting for your practice. It's just really, really nice to have in your corner. All right, going into what's next before we start getting into questions, actually. So remember, if you have questions, put those into the chat or put those into the Q&A box. Okay, so what's next for legal technology? So to me, possibilities are endless, right? And you'll see more and more pieces of technology get added, but be wary of adopting AI just for the sake of adopting it, right? So we see a lot of shiny new things, but it doesn't mean that it's actually going to help you or help your firm. So how I like to view it and how I've always viewed any type of legal technology that I adopt is, if it doesn't make me more money or it doesn't get me more free time back in my day, I do not need it, right? Why am I paying for it in that regard? So keep that in mind too when it goes to generative AI, because you're going to see a lot of stuff, a lot of bells and whistles where you're thinking, oh my God, this looks so cool. And how amazing is this? And this is so tech forward. But that doesn't mean it's going to make you money. That doesn't mean it's going to give you more free time. So just keep that in the back of your mind of, am I gaining a huge benefit by adopting this? Because if you're not, don't do it, right? Don't adopt it just for the sake of adopting it. It doesn't make any sense. And then, like I said before too, chances are if there is a piece of legal technology that you love, highly likely that they're soon going to have an AI offering. So contact them, ask to be placed on their beta for their AI functionality, their AI features. Again, that usually means you get early access to it and it's free at that point, which is lovely. And you get to help them grow their product and you get almost a little bit of ownership in that, which is nice. But companies are going to continue to build and refine their AI features, and eventually you will truly be able to consider it a valuable assistant to your firm, right? So instead of a bumbling summer associate, I do think it will be upgraded as this technology grows to a full-fledged assistant that you can trust. All right, so before we get into questions, I just wanted to say thank you again to Smokeball for hosting today's CLE. I really just want to say that legal technology changed the way that I practiced. And to me, it's really critical to the success of law firms, especially in my eyes, when it comes to keeping your office organized, your office profitable, and to save your sanity, like it did mine. Legal technology I didn't know existed. As of 5 years ago, I didn't know that it was a thing. You don't know what you don't know. And now that I've adopted it and have it, I absolutely love it, and it will change your life. So if you're looking for something to really take your firm to the next level, maybe dip your toes into the waters of AI or document automation or automatic time tracking, like I talked about, I highly encourage you to look into Smokeball. So really think of it like your entire firm's ecosystem, but digitized and automated. So everything's found in one place. No more having to open up 5 million different tabs and log into 5 million different pieces of technology in order just to work your cases. That really did annoy me. At my firm, we had like 8 to 10 pieces of technology, just kind of sporadic across the board that I would have to log into every day in order to run cases. And it really does drive you nuts at the end of the day, especially when you do adopt a legal technology practice management system, because then you realize, oh, this could have been a lot easier. And I feel a little bit betrayed. But so it's been great, but it also made me realize how inefficient my prior firm was. So with that being said, before we go into Q&A, and I said I would do this, we're going to drop a poll in here for you where it says, would you like to learn more about how Smokeball can work for your firm? You can say yes, not at this time, or I'm already a Smokeball user. You can also, we'll reach out to you too, because I do think that you should take a demonstration of Archie and what Archie can do. It's just been amazing, but highly, highly recommend, no matter what, even if you're just curious about Smokeball, or if you're curious about what a practice management software is, or you're curious about how Smokeball compares to your current setup, highly, highly recommend that you select yes. It's a great way to learn about how Smokeball can be customized to your firm's needs, right? Because obviously a family law firm in Texas, are going to be very different than a PI firm in Florida, right? And how you operate and the things that you need every day. So, but it's customized to your state, it's customized to your practice area, everything. It's almost like bespoke almost for your firm, which is really, really great. But when you typically sign up for these, so if you say yes, you'll just take a demo of the software, which is just a live demonstration. Typically, it's a half hour over Zoom. Well, they'll just take you through the software, especially pertaining to your state and your practice area, even your county. They'll go really granular for you too. And again, take as many demos of as many different pieces of software as possible, right? Because you don't know what's going to be working for your firm or what's not going to be working for your firm until you take that demonstration. So I always tell everybody, especially if you're starting out or you're breaking away and you're hanging your own shingle, take as many pieces and as many demonstrations, like live demos, as possible for all of the technology that you're going to use, but especially for a practice management system, because this is probably the biggest purchase and the biggest deal for your practice, right? Your practice management software has everything, so take it seriously. All right, and now we're going to get into, oh yeah, and just say, as I said before, if you have any questions about Smokeball or about our member benefit partnership with the Florida Bar and how you get your 10% discount, just click on that link that's going to be in the chat or scan that QR code. But right now we're going to get into questions. And while I'm doing questions, here's your CLE information. So this was approved for an hour of general credit and an hour of technology credit. The course number for today's webinar is 8678. Again, that's 8678. And while you see that, and I'll have that up, I'm going to see if there are any questions whatsoever. Again, if you have them, go ahead and pop those into the chat here, or into the Q&A box. Let me go back to questions. Here we go. There we go. All right. Okay. So for Q&A, here we go. Are we able to get a copy of the deck, Michelle? Absolutely. That's going to be sent to you after today's session. So typically we do that in a day. a day or two, you'll get a follow-up email that'll have a copy of the recording and a copy of the deck. So yes, that will be done, done, done. And then as far as we have okay, okay, yeah, just time for one. All right. So as far as asking about ensuring the accuracy of AI generated legal research or documents, again, it really just comes down to you need to be double checking it yourself. There's no technology right now that's going to tell you, hey, this case was generated or this, brief was generated by AI and everything in it is legit and true. There's just nothing that exists like that right now. So what you're really going to have to do is go in there and just double check the accuracy of this. And sometimes when I say hallucinations, that doesn't mean complete lies. It doesn't necessarily mean completely made up or fake cases. Sometimes it's very real cases that have just been misapplied, because the AI is still just trying to get more and more sophisticated as it goes along. So just be careful about that when it comes to the output there. And then another person said, oh, how transparent should attorneys be about the use of AI in the billing process? So Florida's actually released an opinion on this. The Florida Bar has, so I would go and check that out, where they've promulgated some proposed kind of rules for the use of AI. And a lot of that does come down to you should disclose the use of AI in some instances for your client, depending on the type of products that you use. So just they don't have actual rules in place right now. They just have guidelines. Like no state has adopted new rules for AI. Every state is essentially saying, oh, the rules that already existed for regular, like client confidentiality and overseeing non-lawyer employees and things like that, they're saying, oh, now that applies to generative AI. So you're hearing that a lot, but nobody has adopted actual generative AI rules yet. So everything right now is kind of just like a guideline. So keep that in mind too. I expect that to change maybe in a year or two once the dust kind of settles for generative AI, but just keep a lookout on that. All right, so we are at your full hour here, folks. So again, if you're needing to leave, go ahead. But if you're staying on for the after party, and again, your CLE number is 8678, but this 10-minute after party that we're going to do, I'm going to be doing a live demonstration of Archie, which I kind of went over for a brief second during today's CLE. So buckle up. A little bit about Smokeball's ethos when it comes to generative AI, and what it wanted it to do is they wanted to incorporate it into the case life cycle that you already have, right? So intake, actually managing your cases, tracking and billing your case because for some reason people don't want to pay their divorce attorney. It's very strange. And then collecting those payments and being compliant with your state bar. So when we were thinking about how to adopt generative AI, we want to adopt it into this ecosystem, right? We don't want to put out a product and just say, oh, well, now we have this standalone AI feature that doesn't really do much, right? We want it to actually help you work your cases. So with that being said, we'll get into the actual AI software. So let me exit out of that one. And now I'll go into Smokeball AI. So give me 1 second as I pull it up here. All right, so share screen here. Yes, screen one. All right. So this is just a random smattering of matters that I had in Smokeball, obviously. Hopefully you can see this. Yes. All right, so I'm going to select a divorce in the Elizabeth Johnson case, because this is what I'm comfortable with in my divorce land territory. Yay, family law. So you'll see here in Smokeball, this is just what it looks like when you pull up a case in our system. So you have a bunch of matter details, everything that you could possibly want with regard to a divorce case. This changes based on your state. This changes based upon the practice area, right? Because obviously not every type of case is going to have a petitioner and a respondent. Sometimes it's going to be plaintiff and defendant, things like that. So this will change depending on the type of case that you select and the state that you select for your particular matter. And then you'll see here below, this usually has 10,000 documents in it, where it's just every document in your case, right? All of the pleadings, all of the emails, every single thing that has been done in your case is here in our document repository. This obviously is not a real case, so there are only a few documents in here, for client confidentiality purposes. And so you'll see this here, but typically this is just full of emails and pleadings and other documents and miscellany for your cases. Now, here's what Archie does. So you'll see here this little tab up top, and I can click on that. So Archie now knows that we are in the Elizabeth Johnson case, right? Because I'm in the matter of Elizabeth Johnson. So everything that I ask Archie will only be pertaining to this particular case, right? So it knows that we're in Elizabeth Johnson. So for instance, if I just sit down and I say, oh my gosh, I'm taking over this case from another attorney, or I need to figure out what's happening in this case, or maybe I'm drafting something and I need answers very quick, I can ask questions about it here. So I can say things like, oh, what I asked you before, what is the date of marriage? And I'm a very loud typer. It's very aggressive. I apologize if you can hear that. But so I can ask what's the date of marriage, right? Maybe I'm drafting their final decree and I'm trying to figure out when that is. And you'll see it says date of marriage, September 12th, 1999. And then it tells you where it got that information from, right? This marital settlement agreement. And then that maybe I'm asking, oh, I need to figure out what's happening with the kids here. I need to see, maybe I'm prepping for a trial and I'm taking over from somebody. So I'll say, what are the ages of the children, right? Because it matters to me if they are under 3 or if they are over the age of 18 or maybe about to age out and graduate from high school, things like that. So it's very relevant to me. So I see here that one child is 14, one child is 3, right? So that's relevant for me. If I don't want to do math, I can also ask, when do the children turn 18? So again, right, it's just asking things that you would already ask or things that you would already have to calculate yourself, but now it already knows because it's consumed everything in your case file. So you'll see it says Bobby turns 18 January 1st, 2028. Jamie turns 18 February 1st, 2039. Perfect. So I don't have to worry about anybody aging out anytime soon when I'm drafting. But then I can ask things like, is there a marital settlement agreement in this case? So again, I'm just trying to get up to speed, or maybe my client called me and said, hey, I see that there's this marital settlement agreement. Can we go over it? Can you give me a summary? Perfect, no problem. And so what can happen here is Archie said, yep, there's a marital settlement agreement in this case. It's documented in the following files. So let me get into the marital settlement agreement. I'll click on that. And you can see it'll give you like a little preview that only ants can read. So you can open that up more and read it that way. Or what I really like to do with this is I want to ask this particular document a question. So instead of asking my entire case a question, I want to start a chat just about this marital settlement agreement because that's what my client has questions about. So I'm going to ask, can you give me a summary of this marital settlement agreement? And again, I have very aggressive typing. I hope you can't hear it. Okay. I was teased about it in law school. Okay, so can you give me a summary of this marital settlement agreement? And then it says, certainly, here it is. It gives you a general overview of things. It gives you key provisions. And look, and it's actually very aesthetically pleasing, which is lovely. And so it'll go through it, gives you this really great summary, which is perfect for me. And so maybe at this point, okay, my client wanted, and I can double check it, to the right, I can open up the marital settlement agreement. I can double check these things. But now, say I did, and now I want to send this email to my client who wanted a summary of it, which is perfect. So I can say, can you draft? I always am very polite in asking because you never know when the robot overlords will take us. And I don't want to be the first one to be killed. So I always am very nice in my conversations with generative AI. So I'll say, can you draft an email to the client with the above summary, telling her she can change it by agreements in a year. If she has questions, just let me know. Right? So it's almost like you're dictating to somebody, like you're dictating to an assistant what you need. So I've asked Archie that. Again, can you draft an email to the client with the above summary, telling her she can change it by agreement in a year. If she has questions, just let me know. And you'll see here, it gives you the summary. Since it's in your case, right? Since it's integrated into your practice management system, it already knows the email address for your client. So you'll see the subject is summary of marital settlement agreement. Dear Ms. Johnson, I hope this email finds you well. And so you'll see everything's been included. And what I said before about you can change it, you can change it in a year. If you have any other questions, just feel free to let me know. So there are certain things you can click from here. You can change your tone, change the length, improve the writing. If you wanted to change tone, maybe you want to make it more professional or more formal, more concise, more friendly, more persuasive, things like that. The length you can change if you want to make it shorter or longer. improve your writing? Do you want to check grammar and spelling? Do you want to check it for clarity and conciseness, for professional tone? Or you can just ask it down here too. So I can say, can you make this friendlier? Elizabeth is a friend. And so you can ask that and you'll see what happens here is it's going to change the tone of what it had up here. So remember up here, it had subject summary of marital settlement agreement, said, Dear Miss Johnson, I hope this email finds you well. So now if you go back down here, it's going to change this, it'll change the subject line a little bit. So instead of saying summary of marital settlement agreement, now it's made it a little bit more friendly, right? So it says summary of your marital settlement agreement. It says, Hi, Elizabeth, instead of Dear Miss Johnson. So it's little things like that, little tweaks like that, that generative AI is so good at. So when I'm talking about tone correction, that's what I'm meaning. You can make it more professional, you can make it less professional, you can make it more compelling if you want. It'll do legitimately anything that you want. So let's say it drafted this, I've double checked it, I want to send it to the client. Well, you can do a couple things. You can create an email from this draft, you can copy it to your clipboard. You can save it as a memo to your case file. You can copy it into Word if there's like something that you wanted to do with it. Or here, create email from draft is my favorite because, oh, it opened up on my other screen. Because when it does this, it immediately opens this up. And remember, since it already is in your practice management software and it knows what matter you're referring to, it already populates this to Elizabeth, to the client. Subject line is the same of what it was, in the system. It attaches the marital settlement agreement because it knows it's what we're talking about. And then it includes everything that was already discussed in there. So you can see how powerful that is. And then not only that, since it's linked up into your Smokeball account, if you look down here at the bottom, there's a link to Elizabeth Johnson where you can select if this email is billable, which absolutely yes, it is. And then when you send it, it'll automatically be uploaded into your Smokeball account. So for instance, we're going to send that. And then if we go back into Matter, you'll see right here that email was just sent out. And since I said that it was billable, it's also going to pop out a draft invoice statement at the end of today, asking me if I want to push that into an invoice. So it's really powerful how it's all integrated. And that's part of the reason why generative AI software is just taking practice management systems by storm, because everything is so kind of enmeshed with one another. And just makes it more powerful, honestly. But so yeah, sky's the limit with Archie. If you have any questions about it, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. This is a really fabulous piece of software. I'm a big, big fan of it. My email address is jordan.turk@smokeball.com. If you ever have any questions whatsoever about it, I'm always happy to talk about generative AI and practice management software and how I use it in my particular firm. But thank you all so much for sticking around. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email. And thanks again for having me. I love being with the Florida Bar, and I hope everybody is staying safe and just away from any type of hurricane. But yeah, thank y'all so much.